All right, we are back here wrapping up the podcast, this week's pop culture segment, bringing you today a new voice in the pop culture coverage. Not new to the podcast, though. We did talk to him back in December for the fantasy football playoffs. The great Alan Pines with us today. Alan, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks for having me. It feels good to talk about something, be back on the airwaves amidst all that's going on, and it's really fun to talk what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, two things before we get into the actual pop culture stuff. Number one, how did you do in your fantasy football leagues last year? How did your championships go?
Well, in the big money league, I shockingly made the playoffs, which I don't remember if at the time we talked was news, but I did not do well in the first round. But to be a seller at the deadline to wind up making the playoffs in a 16 team league where only 6 teams make the playoffs was quite an achievement within itself. And I really look forward to next year's season if it ever comes, which I think it will. But I want to carry the momentum I built towards the end and bring it into next season.
Yeah, that was encouraging. I mean, I did win my league. I have the championship trophy sitting right next to our podcast studio on the road, so that's always nice to have here. But I also want to ask you about the XFL folding up shop. Something that happened in the process of recording this episode. You worked for the New York Guardians for a little bit. What are your thoughts on the end of the second incarnation of the XFL?
I'm really bummed out about it, to be honest with you. I had a lot of fun. I thought the league was in really good shape to strive. And I do think if there was no pandemic, we'd be really excited about, what the championship would hold for the league and where we're headed. And I really do think players were starting to make names for themselves. And obviously, some have already signed with the NFL. But I was looking forward to the league being that kind of secondary league where players can get showcased and the fans can really have fun with it after the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl, so I was pretty bummed out to see that it's got the fate that it does. I really enjoyed my time there. I think every team tried really hard, and I do think Vince McMahon put a lot of time, energy, and money into it. And to see it fold under these circumstances is really, really heartbreaking for so many people that worked really, really hard. And I'm really upset to see it go.
Yeah, it's a shame how it ended. They deserved far better than they got. But we'll go to more positive topics here. We'll go to the pop culture segment. Past few weeks on the podcast, we really sort of narrowed in on like one specific show. Whereas like I did Curb Your Enthusiasm, the beginning of this, of Martino Puccio. Last 2 weeks has been a little Westworld coverage. This week we're kind of opening up a little bit, come up with some playlists for people who are right now. Most of the primetime shows starting to exhaust their inventory of new episodes, so we're giving you some playlists to come up with to sort of get you through the streaming period with no sports, very little live programming options. I think we should go through each playlist. We come up with 5 shows. We'll go the elevator pitch of what the show is and why you should watch it. We'll alternate here. Alan, I'll let you go first. What is the first show on the Pines playlist?
Okay. So I'm not going to do any kind of particular order here. It's just 5 shows that I really, really enjoy. And I'm going to kick it off with Glow, which for me as a diehard professional wrestling fan, to have a show that covers both professional wrestling and really good script work, really good production, really great acting is something that is just such a sight for my sore eyes when it comes to the wrestling world, which is, for all intents and purposes, a soap opera. It's melodramatic. It's got big characters, and this show really, reels in the wrestling world into something artistic and really, really well done. Allison Brie, Betty Gilpin, Mark Maron carry the load. And really, it is a show about wrestling, but it's so much deeper than that. And now that we've just finished, I believe, the 3rd season, now it's getting into stuff that is not necessarily purely wrestling based. So it's diving into the characters. It's really getting to know these performers. And like I said, the acting and writing is really strong. So it holds up very well with each passing episode. And yeah, it's a show that I really, really enjoy. And if you haven't watched it yet, don't be discouraged because you think it's a wrestling show. It's really creative, well done, and I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, definitely a great elevator pitch from there. That's on Netflix, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the first show from Alan. It's Glow on Netflix. I'll give you my first recommendation, and we have any questions, you can also feel free to ask if anything piques your interest. I'm going to start with a show that, unfortunately, today, I think CBS just canceled it, but this is one that I've really grown to like over the last 2 years. I think it's very different, very out of the box of what that network usually does. It's called God Friended Me. And the premise is basically this. It's based on this atheist podcaster who basically believes that God does not exist. He gets a friend request on Facebook from this thing that's calling itself the God account. And it basically suggests friends for him to help people in just general experiences, sort of like, oh, like this person needs help. It'll guide you to helping them in one way or another. And the thing I love about this show is that the acting is great. The main character, played by Brandon Michael Hall, formerly from ABC's The Mayor fame, like he's a very dynamic lead. He's got great personality. It's a very diversely cast show, which is not something you usually say for CBS. I mean, 5 out of the 6 leads in the show are minorities, which is not something you usually get out of that network. And it's not your typical, oh, solve the case of the week. There's a bit of a mystery underlying the whole thing. And the thing I like about it is that, it's a show that makes you, feel good about like humanity and the state of it. It's like, it's not overtly religious, but it makes you raise questions about like, is there something more powerful out there? Is there a greater purpose for us out there? And it's a simple message. It gets the job done really well, and the cast works very well together. I'm ashamed it only got 2 seasons. I think it's done very, very well.
Interesting. Yeah, I never checked it out. Now, the fact that it was canceled, is it a shock? Did they have closure, or is it open ended?
Well, the show is still in the middle of its second season right now. The finale is going to be in 2 weeks, so I don't know how much closure they're actually going to get, but you basically have 2 full seasons worth of show. I think the cast alone makes it worth checking out because it's a very nice cast. They have a lot of interesting supporting characters they bring in along the way. They sort of pop up at now and then, and I think it's a fun ride.
My next show is one that is currently airing. It's on Showtime. So if you have Showtime anytime, I believe you can stream it now. And it's a show that I really thought when I first heard about it was going to be like this deep dive into the stock market crash in the 80s. But it turns out it's a balls to the wall, just laugh out loud comedy riot. And that's Black Monday. Black Monday is a half hour. It's an easy watch. It's a fun watch. It flies by, and you've got a stud cast. I mean, Don Cheadle every year just proves that he is one of our elite actors, and Don Cheadle carries the comedy like no one else can. It's just joke after joke after joke in a way that reminds me a lot of 30 Rock or Kimmy Schmidt, where the writers just hit you with so many jokes in every line that you have to watch a couple times to see if you caught everything. The show's, it's a little out there. It's pretty raunchy, but it's not the raunchiest, but it is pretty raunchy. But it's not tacky. It's not grotesque. Everything is done in the world they've created. And Don Cheadle, Regina Hall, and the Book of Mormon's original Andrew Rannell are just lights out. Everyone is spot on. It's cast perfectly, and it's so quick-witted. I highly recommend it for anybody who just loves a thinker of a show, but really doesn't take itself too seriously, making it a really easy, enjoyable watch. And it's on the second season right now.
Yeah, I will say, I'm going to get to a Showtime show next. That's going to be where I'm going in this direction. I've seen the promos for Black Monday all the time, and I have to say, Don Cheadle does pop in just the promos. I can only imagine what he's like in the actual show.
It's amazing. He's really spectacular.
Yeah, he is. Let's stick with the Showtime theme. I'm going to Showtime right now for another show. It's wrapping up its run. This one by its own merits, though. This is Homeland. You and I discussed this off the air. It is in its 8th and final season right now. Most of you are probably familiar with the concept of Homeland. This is the first couple of seasons where we have a CIA agent played by Claire Danes who has schizophrenia, who is basically convinced that an American prisoner of war played by the great Damian Lewis is basically turned by Al Qaeda into a sleeper agent. That sort of plot drives the first couple of seasons of the show. Then it sort of evolves into a bit more of a thriller over the last 4 or 5 years of its run. I think it stumbles a little in the middle, but the end of the show right now is peaking very well. You have the great cast dynamic between Danes and Mandy Patinkin as Saul Berenson, the two mains throughout the entire show. You got a great throw. If you are a 24 fan, it kind of fills that itch a little bit. I think the storytelling is very well done. There are points where it gets a little rough, but I say stick with it. The show is very entertaining, very well produced. The music's always great, and the locales they do are amazing. I mean, they shoot in the Middle East a lot. They shot in Germany. They've shot in Pakistan. I think they shot in India. They go all over the place, and it's incredibly well done.
Yes, I'm caught up with Homeland, and I have to say that it's very intense and it's very, very high quality.
Yeah, I've always loved that show. I mean, I admit seasons 4 and 5 were a little like touch and go, but I think once they got their footing back in season 6, and then 6, 7, and 8, they're finishing strong.
Yeah, and they're finishing off with what works about the show, which is the real political intrigue and the overseas and the foreign governments, and it's cooking.
It is cooking. Speaking of what's cooking, what else is next on your list? Where are you going
Uh,
next?
Next, I'm going to go with something that is purely a comedy. It is not anything to think about. It is just something that is so well crafted. It's not for everybody. I will say that as a disclaimer, but it's something that made me laugh very hard watching, and that's American Vandal. And like God friended me, it's two and done. So you've got 2 seasons. It's not a hard watch, and it is probably one of the more hard TVMA kind of shows out there. It is not for everybody. It is very raunchy. It's got very overt jokes that will not hit everybody the same way. But here's where I sing its praises. For as grotesque and as raunchy as it is, it's clever and it weaves everything together wisely. And what it is it came out around the time Making a Murderer really, came through, and The Jinx with Robert Durst on HBO. And it's a spoof of those kind of whodunit documentaries where someone's to blame in the beginning, and the more you go through it, you wonder who really did it. And the way they did it using such goofy concepts is just so laugh out loud funny. And they treat it honestly. They're not making a joke of it to the point where they want to laugh with us. We're laughing at everything they're putting out there. So the cast is great. It's all young kids, and they hit the nail on the head with what they were going for. And if you find it's your kind of thing, stick to it. Now, season 1 and season 2 kind of have different casts except for the main two investigators. I prefer season 1 over season 2, but if you find yourself enjoying season 1, gotta watch season 2. So I'm going with American Vandal. That's on Netflix.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because I'm one of those guys who love the true crime docs, who loves the Making of Murderers, loves the Jinxes. I love the Staircase on Netflix, where like I remember that show I followed it for the years where they had the original 8 episodes and then 2 more, and then Netflix added 3 more. Like I feel like that'd be right up my alley in terms of something like this is sort of like spoofing that genre of the true crime and sort of like spinning it on its head.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and why this only get 2 seasons? Did you have any like? Is there any like particular reason why it didn't last more than it did?
I think part of it is the kind of the style of the show really doesn't lend itself to have multiple seasons because both seasons cover a different kind of vandalism. And to keep going might really pull away from the quality. I think what they're going to do is if they find another idea that's worth it, I'm sure somebody will finance a season 3. But as of right now, I don't believe there's anything planned, and it's not the end of the world. It's not like we are unsatisfied. Both seasons have conclusions, so really they stand on their own. So it's almost like you're okay. You know what I mean? It's not selling itself short. And honestly, I think to go any further may not be as strong. So I wouldn't take it as, oh, there's only two. It must not be that great. The way the show's set up, every season stands on its own. So if they don't have that super strong idea to build it off of, they probably shouldn't go forward with it.
Yeah, it makes sense. Sort of like how Curb Your Enthusiasm is like the standing renewal or from HBO, where it's like if Larry David wants to make a new season, he can make one. It's just like
Right.
that's like
Now, I don't think this show would have that because I do think it was like technically canceled, but the way it's set up, they could bring it back anytime. You know what I mean? Like it's not, and another network could easily scoop it up if they wanted.
makes
But
some.
again, I do think the idea has to be there.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. I'll go another show. It's similar like deal where it's like it went one and it looked like it could have been one and done in terms of like an anthology style on Netflix, but they did pick it up for a second season with basically changing the whole cast, which is The Haunting of Hill House. Are you familiar with this, Alan?
It's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, I think this show is well worth a visit. It's a great horror thriller. It talks about a haunted mansion that this family owns, and it's based on the Haunting of Hill House. It's based on a book, and basically the show takes us in an 8-episode thrill ride through the perspective of this mystery of the house and what it did to the kids, to the family when they were younger. And we have a brilliant dual cast set up here. We have the present day cast of all the kids of the family as grown ups, with the dad as a grown up, like basically traumatized at what happened to them in Hill House. And then we see the flashbacks to what they did at Hill House, what happened to the mom, and all that good stuff. And the thing I like about this show is that it's self-contained. It's one season, and they are doing a new story the following season with new characters. I like that premise, but it's self-contained. They did some original ideas. There was one episode I saw. I remember it was the 5th or 6th episode where the entire thing was basically shot like block style in, I think, the mansion, where basically had like one continuous kind of shot where they basically switched between the real story and the present story all within the presence of the house.
It was
Creativity like that
spectacular.
was spectacular. It was great. I cannot recommend it enough. It keeps you on the edge of your seat, and you'll be sitting there at the end of every episode when you get to the point where it's the tease between episode 7 and 8. When they open the red room, the reveal blows your mind.
I would say it's one of the most satisfying seasons of television I've ever seen in my entire life. I am right there with you with the legitimacy and the just overall quality that is Haunting of Hill House. Few things have touched it, especially in the horror genre, in my opinion.
Indeed. What do you think about the fact they're going to do the Haunting of Bly Manor? Have it be? I think they're bringing back one person from the cast, or they're having her as a new character. What do you think about them trying to recreate the magic with a new storyline?
I trust them. At this point, they've given me no reason to think that Mike Flanagan has done it several times with different projects. There's no reason for me to think that it can't be pulled off. I am very much looking forward, but one thing we have to do as audience members is to remember to limit comparisons and to have new eyes, new ears, and just a new open mind when it comes to a new season, especially a lot of these shows, The True Detectives, one show that I'll get to shortly, where the casts interchange every season, partly business-wise, so they can afford to bring on bigger names per season, but also because really it keeps the stories fresh. And I trust them. I do think they will do a bang-up job, and I'm not worried at all. How do you feel?
I'm excited to see where they can go, because I think they were so creative that first season. I think it's fantastic. I think it's really well done. I trust them to come up with something interesting.
There are a couple moments in season 1 of that show where my heart literally leapt out of my chest, or I got goosebumps on my arms, or my jaw was on the floor. It's legitimately scary. It's legitimately heartwarming, and it's just so well crafted. I've used that expression a couple times, but this is the epitome of it so far.
It is indeed. Let's go. What's next on your list?
So the next 2 shows are probably 2 of my favorite shows of all time. One just wrapped, and one's about to kick off season 4. I'm going to go with the one that just wrapped. It's another Netflix show, and it's BoJack Horseman. It's an animated show. I wanted to mix it up. I wanted to get an animated, but animated or not, it is probably the most heart-wrenching show I've ever watched. It's one of the funniest television shows I've ever watched. It's another million jokes per episode kind of feel. With the animation, they're able to push boundaries that other shows cannot. Will Arnett as BoJack Horseman and all of the supporting actors in their voice roles are so pitch perfect. Every one of them connects with the audience, and at all times, you're at the edge of your seat waiting to see what's going to happen next to these characters. It's probably the deepest show I've ever watched in terms of emotional connection, and it really pulls no punches. It goes to places you wish it didn't, but at the same time, nothing feels cheap and unearned. Everything on this show is done for a reason, and it's done with creativity. I cannot recommend BoJack Horseman enough. And for those who are unfamiliar, I think it's just another animated comedy. That wouldn't be further from the truth. It's a drama with comedic elements, and everything on it is just so I'm trying to think of the perfectly articulated word, but it's just so gripping. And I really think people don't know what they're getting into if they throw on BoJack Horseman.
Yeah, I like the idea there because I know anime people always think, oh, Family Guy, oh, Simpsons. Like this is like a deeper kind of animation where you actually can't just have it on as background noise while you're like working on something else. Like you want to actually pay attention to the details.
100%. That's a great point. It is not a background noise animated show. It's one that there are certain episodes which are so heavy. I had to stop. I had to stop and give the show a break for a couple days because I just had to recover from what I just saw. It is not Nothing on the show is thrown away, which I know is a critique of a lot of Family Guy and Simpsons where they just throw away jokes just for filler. Nothing on this show is filler. Every line is calculated, everything is put in there with purpose, and it's a really hard watch, but I can't recommend it enough in terms of enjoyability. It is just there and it's what it is, and if you're not with it, you're not with it. I was with it.
You were with it indeed. I'm going to go to my next show here, which is we'll stay on Netflix. And this is an interesting one considering this came out back in January. It is an interesting experiment now considering we are in the era of social distancing. It is called The Circle. It's one of the rare reality shows on Netflix, and it got a huge play. Were you familiar with The Circle?
I've watched the pilot of the American version.
Yeah, so that's the Netflix American version. I watched all 12 episodes of that show. I'm going to go into deeper detail on it next week on this spot with my good friend Steve Culto. But for those who are unfamiliar with it, The Circle is basically a reality game show where they put a bunch of Americans in this apartment complex where they all live in like these posh apartments, but they live alone. They don't interact with each other except through a social media app called The Circle. And they can't see each other visually. They rely entirely on these online profiles they make on this app to get to know each other. So one of the things I like about this show is that like you could be yourself. You could be somebody completely different if you think it's gonna help you gain popularity in the game, because the whole idea is that you want to gain influence over the others through your interactions in the circle, and whoever wins at the end of the show gets $100,000. So interesting thought experiment considering where we are now as a society.
Yeah, and from what I remember, they were really stressing the appearances are not everything aspect of it. So you want to dig deeper than just what you think people will like. And that's where the show became kind of a game show. It became very creative as opposed to just catfish. You know what I mean? Like it's deeper than that.
Yeah, it gets much deeper than that. They do go into a lot of things. We'll go into deeper detail on this next week on the podcast, but I think considering where we are now, it's an interesting look at this and see how people dealt with this when like they chose to be on this show. Like we did not have a choice in this situation. So and you can see how they adapted to see if anything we could apply to our current situation.
My top, well, not my top spot, but my final show that I'm going to dive into. It's a little unfair. I believe it's my favorite show on television right now, so it's the top spot. I got to admit, and it's Fargo. It's on FX. The new season premieres April 19th, and I cannot tell you, as an old school film fan, as somebody who digs the Coen Brothers, who digs Scorsese, Tarantino, real artists, real cinematic presences, this show is an embodiment of a lot of the filmmakers that I really enjoy. It's crafted as such. It's Coen Brothers. It is just so spectacular for me as an audience member. It hits everything I ever wanted to. Quirky characters in a real world setting, exaggerated circumstances happening to everyday people. It is just so good. And every season has a different cast, save for a few, characters who intertwine. But you've got some of the most pure villains in television history. And what helps it is what I said. It's all in a real world setting. Just to name a couple performances that have jumped out at me. Billy Bob Thornton and Martin Freeman and Allison Tolman season one. Season two, you've got a great Bokeem Woodbine character. You've got Patrick Wilson, Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons. Season three, you've got Ewan McGregor pulling double duty, playing twins. You've got Mary Elizabeth Winstead. You've got David Thewlis as one of the best villains. It's just one of the most well acted shows. Everyone plays their part to a T. And it's just so funny. They throw in the Minnesota accents, which, yeah, it's fun and shocking at first, but it becomes the quick normal, and you're hook, line, and sinker through all of it. Now, season four's got Chris Rock leading the charge. I couldn't be more excited for what's to come out of Fargo, and I cannot recommend this show enough, especially for real film buffs and for people who just love quality TV. It's just something that I really got behind. Noah Hawley, the creator, working with the Coen brothers. Every season introduces a new element to the show that you're just not expecting to come, but here it comes. For like I said, I think the real selling point is for somebody like me who's just a real film buff, a show like this is everything I can hope and ask for. Fargo.
That sounds spectacular. It's on my list of shows I want to check out, so I'm glad you gave the endorsement here. I'm very pumped to get to this one.
Oh, I can't recommend it enough. And I know you love movies. You're going to click with this show. You're going to be bought in pretty quick. And season one, we mentioned season one of Haunting of Hill House. Season one of Fargo is right up there in my top 5 TV show seasons of all time.
That is very, very high praise, so I'm excited to get to that one. I think for me now, I'm going to wrap with there are a lot of different ways I could go for this. I mean, well, I'm sure we'll come back another time and give you 5 more shows because you and I'm sure you could go all day if you wanted to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll stick with 5 for now. We'll save the honorable mentions. We'll make another list in about like another month or two and see if we come up with some more ideas. But for me, I think the one I want to go to next is another show that just wrapped up. It was actually on USA. The great Mr. Robot wrapped up this, I think last fall, and this show, the acting on it is superb. The great Rami Malek is the star of this show. It's about a disillusioned hacker who basically wants to fight for what's right and help the common man rebel against the 1% of the 1% who are controlling all of the world. And there are twists galore I will not spoil because they will literally alter the way you view this show. There are several game-changing twists. The things I like about this, the casting is great. The acting on the show is phenomenal. The writing is great. And there are styles of this show that they take chances with episodes and do unique concepts that are great. There was one episode and I think the show's second or third season, I want to say the third season, where the entire show was shot in one take. They literally did the entire show with one continuous take and not without cutting for 49 minutes, which is absurdly difficult to do. Really well done. There was also an episode in the final season where they basically did a commercial-free thing where the whole thing was structured as a 5-act play within the space of an apartment. They take these kind of chances on the show. They often pay off. I highly recommend Mr. Robot.
That is one that is on my list the way Fargo is on yours. I love Christian Slater. I love Rami Malek, and I do want to get to it at some point. So this just pushes it closer to the top of the list for sure.
Yeah, the thing with Mr. Robot is it's a little bit like BoJack in the sense you mentioned before. That this cannot be a background noise show. There are things going on you have to pay attention to. Like there are times you'll be questioning, like, what did I see? What does this mean? Like this is not a background noise show. So if you're ready to be mentally engaged by a show, this is one I highly encourage you to check out.
I'm definitely pushing it towards the top of my list based on your recommendation.
Yeah, so to reset, Alan, want to reset your 5 for the audience.
Sure. You've got Glow on Netflix. You've got American Vandal on Netflix. You've got BoJack Horseman on Netflix. You've got Fargo, which is it's on Hulu. If you have Hulu, you can go back and watch Fargo on Hulu. And then my 5th show, Black Monday, is on Showtime anytime, and it's currently in its 2nd season on Showtime, Black Monday.
Okay, so reset my 5. Guy Friend of Me on CBS. CBS All Access will have the episodes as well. Homeland, Showtime anytime. Final season ongoing right now. The Circle on Netflix. Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. Mr. Robot on USA. Amazon Prime has all the old episodes there as well. And I think we got a pretty good list here of 10 shows to get people going.
Absolutely. We've got a mix of variety. We've got comedy. We've got reality. We've got animated. We've got drama. We've got it all.
Yeah, we only have one from a broadcast network, so it tells you where the action is these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll admit I'm a big CBS guy. Their stuff is way too formulaic for like the binge, where it's like this they sort of blend together. Like if you're watching NCIS, they're all gonna look the same after a while. And
Yeah, I got to admit, a lot of their stuff is not my cup of tea. But I'm a huge Big Brother nerd, so when it comes to CBS, I'm primarily Big Brother for that network.
yeah, I watched that show as well. I mean, I'm not expecting them to have a summer season. I think they're gonna be delayed a little bit.
I would think so.
My hunch with this is I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I talked about Survivor on this podcast. Is that you're not going to see Survivor 41 in the fall because they're going to have to delay the filming because of the
Hmm.
pandemic. I think you're going to get a Big Brother fall season because CBS is going to need to fill multiple slots on their schedule.
Absolutely. And you know what? If there's ever a show where the participants are probably best off right now, it's Big Brother.
Yeah, because they literally are in the perfect system. They can be locked in a house as long as they're tested and they're healthy before they go in. They can be in there for the entire time and not risk contracting this disease.
Right. And I don't know if it's true, but I think in passing, I saw a headline that said, like, Big Brother country X finds out about pandemic from producers during show or something like that.
Yeah, that
So I
actually
don't know if,
that is
yeah,
the thing. That was the Canadian version was filming. I think in early March. They actually had to suspend the season and send everybody home because of the pandemic and the shut down business orders in Toronto. It's that and the videos now on YouTube are wild.
oh my goodness.
As you see, there's like a progression of three where like they first get told about it, then they get told about the shutdowns in the world, and then they get told they're going home. It's like literally like dramatically increasing stakes each time.
Wow. I got to check that out.
Yeah, those videos are on YouTube. I'll definitely check it out. Before I let you go, I also want to ask, I'm asking the last couple of pop culture people here. What are your thoughts on the multinational hit that is Tiger King?
Well, I've got to say, I have a little bit of fatigue from it at the moment. I believe, in pop culture, when something catches, you better love it, or you're going to get tired of it pretty quick. And I did love it. I love the documentary. I laughed so hard watching it. And then you kind of sober up and you realize that there's just a lot of bad people in play with the Tiger King universe. Nobody's off scot free. Everybody's got their demons, and it's really just, I feel for the animals. You know i'm I'm of the my point of view is the guy's in jail. He's in jail for a reason. Should other people be in jail? I don't know. But as for the show itself, it was crazy. It was some of the most absurd storytelling you could ever imagine. If someone were to write it as fiction, you would tell them they're jumping the shark too much and making stuff too unbelievable. But here it is, something that really happened, and I think it's just mesmerizing. My fiance and I, our eyes were glued to the television as we sped through the 6 or 7 episodes. I believe it was seven, and every story, one after the other, was just more unbelievable than the next. So as far as a documentary, I loved it. I thought it was highly enjoyable. When you sit back and think about it afterwards, it's really kind of sad what went on and what still goes on at some of these zoos and cat places. But I do hope, if anything, it brings a big shining light to the world of animal captivity. And let's hope some regulations or just pure better practices are put in place based on this. But again, as for the documentary, one thing was crazier after the next, and it was so enjoyable. I recommend it to anybody I run into. So that's how I feel about it.
All right, there you have it. Alan, thanks all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can people follow on social media, keep up with some of the stuff you're up to?
Sure. On Instagram, I'm at Alan Austin Sports, and on Twitter, I'm at Allen ALLEN underscore Austin AUSTIN underscore. Alan Austin is my professional name. It's my middle name, but Alan Pines, Alan Austin, it all works. So
Yeah.
you can find me on those platforms.
All right, that sounds great. Austin, thanks for coming on. Alan, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me. I had a blast.